Good evening once again. Thank you all for joining this this evening session of our webinar series. It's a really important one. As you know, we're kicking off our International Women's Days activities, and this is the first webinar series. Today, we have a special member who will be taking us through cash flow optimization. Before I get into that, my name is Bomo Anthony, and I will be hosting this session for the evening. Thank you very much. Our speaker this evening is Toyin Aralepo. She's a commercially astute business leader and finance professional with over 20 years of experience across banking, telecoms, and fintech. She has made a name for herself as a strategic finance expert in building strong financial frameworks. She's currently the Director of Finance Entrepreneurship at Mastercard Foundation. Some of her previous roles include Head of Budgets in UBA, Commercial Controller and Financial Controller at Airtel, and former Director of Corporate Excellence and Program Management, IHS Towers, to name a few. She also founded the Africa Finance Strategy and Hub, Finance and Strategy Hub, which is a financial advisory and strategy consulting firm that helps small and medium-sized enterprises across sub-Saharan Africa set up financial structures that make it easier to put their business goals into action strategically. Over the years, she has coached more than 5,000 business owners. Programs like She Leads Africa, Access Bank, Keystone Bank, Wema Bank Business Schools, the Toyin Foundation, and Women in Business, that's WIMBIZ. She's a very passionate and unassuming entrepreneurial role model to young women. She's a mentor at WIMBIZ, Toyin Foundation, and TechQuest STEM Academy, to mention a few. Recently, she was named one of the top 50 women in management in Africa 2023, 50 most inspiring authors in Nigeria 2023, and top 100 career women in Africa 2023, to name a few. She's also the author of the book, How to Attract Billion-Dollar Investors. She's a first-class accounting graduate, fellow of both ICANN and IIMA, an alumni of London School of Business and Finance. We want to welcome once again Mrs. Aralepo. She's already got her camera on. Thank you. You're welcome, Ma. So I will hand over to you.
Thank you, Bomo. Thank you, everyone. Good evening. So great to be here. And nice to meet everyone, even though I've been a quiet observer on the platform, but it's such a privilege to have everyone here this evening and to share on cash flow optimization. I'll share my screen. I have just let me know once. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. There's a lot to share, but we'll just try to um, maximize the time and go through some of the points. Um, Cash flow is extremely important for any business. Even personally, you can't really operate without cash. So we'll be looking at how the importance of cash flow management, some of the ways of optimizing cash, some of the problems that business owners face, especially with cash flow management, and some of the practical steps or points to note, with respect to cash flow management. By way of introduction, I want to highlight that, most times business owners, they only focus on their income statement. They're not really looking at the cash flow. You hear business owners saying, oh, is it profitable? Am I making profit? Without really paying a lot of attention on the cash flow. And sometimes the cash is so important that you can even compare it to your fuel in the car. You can be driving, and most times people just look at their speedometer. They are not really looking at the fuel gauge. And at the end of the day, when the fuel finishes, the car will stop and you can't even continue without refueling. Same way for businesses. If you are not so careful about the cash, it becomes very, very difficult to run the business. So your cash is equivalent of the fuel, for the business. And it is extremely important that, you take note of cash, because without that, it will be very, very difficult to move on. There are so many things that your business can do, even when you're not making profit.
Sorry, ma, we can't hear you.
But if there's no cash in the business, there's no way you can, even today. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, you're back. The sound is back. Thank you.
Is it okay now?
Yes, yes, ma, it's okay.
Can you hear me now? I think the network.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So can you still see I need to reshare.
Please, you need to reshare. Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. Is it okay now?
Yes, it's better. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. So it is extremely important that we focus on cash, because it is extremely important for the business to move on. And without the cash, obligations cannot be fulfilled, even when the business is not making profit. So it is very, very important that we focus on cash. And this is just highlighting, how cash is moving in the business, the cycle. You have your revenues, you have the costs, and you're running the business. So cash is going out and coming in at the same time. So you need to start looking at how much cash is coming into the business, or how often the cash is coming and in what volume. And you need to start checking how is the cash going out? What are the obligations that you're using the cash for? And is there a match in terms of timing between when the cash is coming into the business and when the cash is flowing out in form of expenses? Because if there's a mismatch, then it becomes extremely difficult, to meet up your obligations. And we all know that cash is not free. That is one thing we need to take cognizance of. Cash is never free. It's either you're losing a sales opportunity or you are paying in the form of interest. So I just want to quickly share a very simple case study just to evaluate and to analyze the importance of cash. And before going into that, there's this saying or quote that profit determines whether what you're doing is worth the while, but it is cash that makes it possible. Because sometimes what you're doing may worth the while, but if there's no cash, then it will be impossible. And I just have a very simple, basic example here. I just use an example of a business owner selling fabrics. And this business owner has about 200K. So the business owner bought 4 pieces of fabrics at 40,000 each, which is about 160K, and sold it to a customer, BJ, at 50,000 each, but on credit. So yes, cost is 160, revenue is 200, outright profit is 40,000. But let's remember that BJ has not made any payment. So if another customer comes, let's even assume another customer has come and requested for 5 pieces. How much cash is left with the business owner? There's only 40,000 left, despite the fact that, yes, there's a profit. But at that point in time, that order cannot be fulfilled because there is no cash on ground. So what next? Is either you go to the bank to borrow to meet up that order, or you go to your vendor, collect it on credit. But one thing about credit is that it's not automatic. It means that maybe you've built relationship, right? So cash is not free. For this business owner to meet up this expectation, is either he goes to the bank to borrow if there's no relationship with the vendor, or he tells the customer, I can't fulfill the order. So that is why cash management is extremely important. And if we just look at this, this is a very simple example, but just imagine the volume. If we don't have enough cash to fulfill obligations in the business, there's no way the business can run. And this is also where customer management comes to play, and also relationship management comes to play. So in a situation where this particular business owner, if he has a very good relationship with the vendor, right? If there's a credit opportunity, he can collect on credit, sell to the customer, and get the cash. So he's not losing that sale. He's also not losing the profit that comes with it. So the key takeout here is that cash is not free. So the cash flow planning is extremely important, because there are little things that we don't really take into cognizance, that we don't pay attention to, that impact on our ability to run the business. The day-to-day running of the business, the financial structure of the business depends on how well any business is able to manage the cash. Because, like I said, cash is never free. It's either you are losing a sale, or you have to pay interest. And one thing about interest is that it reduces the profit. So I just want us to take this into cognizance. Now, the other key point I would like for us to look at is the credit policy. How are we setting this up in the business? Vendor relationship management is extremely important. And this also tells about how reliable we are, the trust factor, the integrity factor, when it comes to managing vendor relationship. So it is extremely important that, when forecasting our cash, we understand the liquidity requirements of the business. We understand the flow of cash that is coming into the business and what we need at any point in time, so that we're able to proactively identify when we're going to have a gap in terms of funding, and we can take the necessary steps. And, we're not running helter-skelter at the point that we need to make some of those obligations and some of the sales that we need to make. The other point I would like to highlight is that, when you understand your cash flow, it is your financial crystal ball, trying to see how much cash are you expecting at a particular point in time in the business. How much sales are you expecting? How much are you expecting from your customers? What are the expenses that you need to pay at any point in time? What is the kind of relationship that you have with your vendors? What are the options that you have with them? What are the leeway that you have with them? When you understand your cash flow system, then you are warned about what is going to happen. And like I said, you can easily plan how to bridge the gap. As a business owner, running businesses, there are times that there are gaps, right? So when there are gaps, how do you bridge those gaps? But if you don't have enough information in terms of understanding the flow and the timing, then it becomes difficult to plan accordingly. And you may be losing sales or you're losing profit at the same time. So when you understand your cash flow projection, you can predict when there will be shortages and surpluses. I mean, for shortages, you can plan ahead. And when you have surpluses, you can invest and get additional income, to augment the operations of the business. Then it helps you to take decisions in terms of planning your working capital, planning your capital requirements as well. Because if all of these things are not in place, then it becomes extremely difficult, especially this period that we are in. You need to be able to predict to a certain level. I mean, nothing is predictable 100%, but it will give you a clearer picture about the bottom line and areas where you need to address. Maybe you need to look at how to increase your sales, to increase the cash inflow. Maybe you need to start discussing with your customers and giving them maybe loyalty programs, giving them discount for upfront payments, then discussing with your bankers as well. Maybe you need to start having some OD lines. The good thing about OD is that you don't have to pay the full interest. You only pay it on usage. And when you have, when your cash flow forecasting is top notch in terms of you're able to predict, then you can confidently go to the bank, and make arrangements for additional lines at that point in time. If you need it, you use it, you pay interest on it. But if you don't need it, then you don't need to pay interest on it. Unlike the term loans that, the amount is fixed, whether you use it or not, you have to pay the full interest. But understanding your cash flow projection will help you to understand what is required at every point in time, and it will aid your planning. It will help you to meet up shortages and invest surplus cash, as the case may be. Now, let's just quickly look at how do you prepare your cash flow. We've gone through the importance of having a cash flow projection, understanding how it impacts on your ability to increase your sales and how it impacts on on the profit as well. Because if you have to get additional to meet up the gap, you need to pay interest sometimes. So understand what you have, at the beginning of the period. Some of these things can be done by the help of your accounting system, but it is important, even if the system is generating it, for you to review and take the strategic decisions in terms of when the shortage will come and what you need to do. So you need to identify what cash you have at the beginning of the period in the bank. then estimate the incoming cash for the next period. So when you estimate what is coming in the next period, depending on the purchasing, the cycle of your customers, how often do they buy? Understanding your customer buying pattern as well will help you to understand when you're expecting the cash from them, right? What is the pattern of payment in the past? Then you also need to estimate the expenses for the next period. What are the policies you have in place with your vendors? Do you pay them within 30 days? Do you pay them within 60 days? Depending on your negotiating power, that will help to estimate, what your expenses are for the next period. By the time you understand this, you need to deduct the expenses from the inflow that is coming in and add the opening balance. So that gives you what is left. As we go on in the presentation, I have like a template, just to highlight some of these points, to see how it comes to life in terms of the numbers and what we need to look out for. So I've gone through this. Let me just go back to, yeah. So I want to address some of the cash flow problems that businesses face. Yes, you understand how to make your cash flow. You can see what is happening. But sometimes you need to ask the questions. Do you have sufficient customers? Because your cash is coming from your cash flow is coming from your customers. If you don't have enough customers, there's no way your cash flow can be sufficient, to meet up all the obligations. You also need to review your pricing. This is one area where businesses face issues. If the pricing does not cover all of the costs of the goods and services, then it becomes difficult. Even when you sell and you collect all the cash, you will not be able to cover for everything that you've invested in the business, because the pricing does not cover all of the costs. So have you factored in all the direct costs? Have you factored in all of the overheads that the business is running? Because if all of these things are not factored in, then it becomes extremely difficult. You also need to look at your cost structure, right? No matter how great your cash flow plan is, if your expenses, the expense structure does not make sense, then your cash flow will always be negative. You will always be having less than what you are generating. And another problem is, even when you have sufficient customers and you are not collecting on time from them, then it becomes difficult, extremely difficult for you to match the timing of when you're collecting from customers. There are some businesses that they don't really look at their credit policy. They've given customers 60 days to make payments. Meanwhile, they've agreed with their own customers to pay within 30 days. That is clear mismatch. And no matter what you do, you are always going to have cash shortage. And once you start having cash shortage, like we saw earlier, you will start losing the opportunity of sales. And if you have to bridge the gap by borrowing, you are depleting your profits. And at the end of the day, this is not a sustainable model. So these are some of the things that we need to start looking at to solve our cash flow problems. There are a number of customers they sell, they don't even collect on time. So much cash is tied up in accounts receivable. And when it is time to even go to the bank, or when you want to bring in investors, they look at your balance sheet. And by the time they review your balance sheet, they deny you those opportunities of growth. So it is extremely important that You manage your cash through your customers, through your credit policy that you've given to them, and make sure that you're also negotiating the right policies as well with your vendors as well. Otherwise, it becomes a problem. Another problem with cash flow is inventory. If we're not managing our inventory properly, then it ties up cash. And once the cash is tied up, you can't sell. And sometimes those inventories, they become obsolete. And by the time they become obsolete, you have to write them off. And as you're writing off, you're losing cash on one hand. I mean, it's double whammy. You are also losing part of your profits, because then you have to take the losses in the P&L. And when your cash flow is weak, it becomes very difficult, to build trust with your key stakeholders. And at the end of the day, you can't even grow that business. You can't attract funding. You can't attract investors. You can't attract bankers to support you, because your secret is open to them. It's just a question of them just picking up your balance sheet, and they know how efficient you're managing your cash flow. So these are some of the problems that we need to start addressing. And these are some of the ways that we can address them. Sometimes we need to address it by looking at the cost structure. Do we need to reduce those outflow? Are some of those costs necessary? We need to start thinking about our the expenses we're incurring. Are they generating cash? I mean, are they generating revenue, or are they just for maintenance? So just pick up your P&L, your expense structure today. How much of that expense is generating additional revenue? And how much of that is just for maintenance? And now, at some of those costs, are they so critical to the running of the operation? You also need to review your staff, the productivity and output. Do you need to start taking some decisions there? I spoke about pricing earlier. Are the products properly priced? Now that there's a huge issue with FX, you need to start factoring in the replacement cost. So it's not just how much you bought those items, but by the time you go back to the market, are you able to buy them over again? You need to mark those prices to the market. And the good thing now is that everybody knows there's an FX issue. So it's an opportunity for you to increase your prices if that is a problem. Because if you don't adjust for the FX impact, especially where your inputs are imported, then when it is time to replace or replenish the inventory, you will have shortage in cash, even if your customers are paying 100%. So these are some of the things that we need to start looking at now. Our credit policy, we need to look at that as well. Are there customers that are chronic in terms of payments? For some of those customers, maybe you need to start factoring in the cost of fund to their prices. They don't get the same price as others that pay on time. These are some of the things that businesses are doing, to cover up for those gaps. Because if you have to cover the gap your non-paying customers are creating, then you need to factor the cost of fund to the pricing, so that at every point in time, at least you're not losing out totally. So these are some of the things that we need to start looking at, to optimize our cash. Tracking is also extremely important, because without tracking the cash flow, what is coming in every day from the bank, how much is being spent, it will be very, very difficult. Make sure you are invoicing on time. Always take away excuses from your customers. Make payments easy for them. if payments, if it is not easy for them to pay, then they will have excuses for not paying you on time. And if there are issues with your customers, you need to resolve them on time, because the more those issues linger, the more difficult it gets, in getting those payments back from them. And sometimes advance payments is very good, especially when you have high risk customers or customers that don't pay on time. You can also explore funding from your vendors, but this is dependent on relationship. This is where relationship management comes to play, and your track record. If you are known for defaulting, then this will be a problem. So funding your business, optimizing your cash flow, you can do it through your customers. You can explore your vendors as well, getting feedback from them, getting good deals from them as well. And where there are opportunities, instead of paying outrightly, you can look at the option of lease. But in doing this, you need to weigh the cost benefit of doing that as well. Because sometimes, trying to manage some of these outright purchases and leases, you need to factor in the cost of fund, the time value of money, to see whether it makes sense, to do it upfront or to do it over time. And ultimately, your revenue is extremely important, because it will, at some point, if revenue, after doing all of these things, if you can't increase your revenue, then it becomes difficult for you to increase your cash and accelerate your growth. So it is extremely important that some of these things are looked into. Understand, to just summarize it, understand your cash flow cycle. How long does it take for each of the value chain listed, for you to, the order to cash cycle? How many days does it take to get payments from your customers as well? You order the goods, you receive the goods, you pay the invoice, you sell the goods, you deliver the goods, you send invoice and customer pays. If it takes longer, to get payment from the customers compared to when you have to make payments, right, for those items, then there's going to be a mismatch. There's going to be a funding gap that you need to address. So you need to keep improving your cash flow, review your expenses, like I said, so that if there are opportunities, you cut down on the outflow so that you can manage what you have as inflow. Look at your expenses as well. Look at your inventory and cut back some of those unnecessary costs, right? Especially during this period, do you need to review the work culture? Do you need to address the space that you have? Are you optimizing your space? Do you need to get a smaller space? So these are some of the things that you need to start thinking about as a business owner, managing businesses to do. Now, the other thing I want to just quickly highlight is understanding your cash burn rates and the runway. This is especially important for startups that are being funded by investors, because they want to understand how you are burning the cash. What are you spending? How long is it going to take you to finish spending what you have from the investors? These are some of the KPIs that they look at. Cash burn rate. What is the pace at which your company is spending money before getting to profitability? And they want to know how long it will take. If you've been giving 100 million, how many months will it take? Based on the current level of spend, and also what you're making, right, in terms of revenue. So I just have a very simple example here to how to calculate your burn rate. Let's assume you have 15 million in the bank, and every month you pay salaries of 2 million. You spend about 3 million for distribution, marketing, and adverts, and 1 million other admin expenses. So let's assume that your revenue every month is 2 million and you spend 1 million as cost of goods sold. So your monthly gross burn rate before factoring in the revenue that you're making is 6 million. So that is 2 million salaries plus the 3 million for distribution and marketing plus the 1 million admin expenses. That's 6 million. Now, by the time you deduct your gross margin, which is your 2 million monthly revenue, less your cost of goods sold, you take out the 1 million net burn rate. You take out the 1 million from the 6 million, then your net burn rate is 5 million, right? You have 5 million as your net burn rate. So to know how long this is going to last, your runway, how many months is this going to last? You just divide the 15 million that you have in the bank by the 5 million. So that gives you 3 months. So this means that whatever cash you have, it is only going to last you for 3 months. So this is very, very important. You know, it will help you, especially when you are fundraising, to understand how long it will take you to deplete what you have now, because you also know that fundraising is not automatic. It takes a lot of time. So when you know how long it is going to take you, then you can plan accordingly, right? You can seek alternatives. You can bridge that gap at every point in time. So I just thought to highlight this as well. So I mentioned about the cash flow template, So what this is showing is that your opening balance, I mentioned that you need to understand or ascertain how much you have left in the bank. You need to collate the cash receipt. How much are you expecting to receive in cash? Yes, you have sold, but how much cash, depending on your credit policy? How much cash are you expecting from your customers? You list out all the cash payments, only cash payments that you have to make. So by the time you list that out, right, and if there are capital payments that you need to make, do you have loan that you are repaying? Do you need to purchase an asset at any point in time? So by the time you put all of this together, you see what you have left. And this is just an example. Opening cash balance here is 20 million. The cash received is 500 million. The total payment for this period, January, is 356. So the net cash flow, that is the inflow less the outflow, is 144. 500 less 356. And there is 20 million in the bank. So how much cash is left at the end of the month is 164. So by the time you do this for each of the months, there are months where there will be gaps. Like the example I have here, you can see that for this particular business owner, the credit policy is 60 days. Meanwhile, most of the expenses have to be paid in the current month. Salaries have to be paid, rent has to be paid. I'm assuming that this is a monthly payment, repairs and maintenance. You have to do all of these things, right? Just look at this. The materials and accessories, you've only been given 30 days. Meanwhile, you're giving your customer 60 days credit. At the end of the day, there's going to be a mismatch. As we can see, here in this example, there is a cash imbalance here, and there's a negative cash flow. The problem or the question now is, how will this gap be funded for the operation to continue? Is either this business needs to get to the bank to get an OD, and by the time you are getting an OD to cover this gap, because you have to pay all of these obligations every month. Then you have to pay, you have to incur interest. And sometimes you may lose part of the sales. So these are some of the reasons why we need to pay close attention, to the cash flow. Otherwise, it becomes very, very difficult to manage the business. I want to stop here. Yeah, so in closing, building revenue without a positive cash flow is just vanity. Profit may bring you some sanity, but it is only the positive cash flow that we give that reality is the fuel that your business needs to grow to the next level. And you can only do this if you're monitoring your cash flow properly, and you're growing the business in a healthy manner. Like Robert Kiyosaki mentioned, making more money will not solve your problems if cash flow management is the problem you have. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you so much. So back to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ma. That was definitely, I can speak from it. I learned a lot, definitely. So I would just share my own screen now. So
Let me stop
you can
sharing.
stop sharing. Yeah. But no, thank you. Really fantastic. We have sorry, I will just turn my video off. I know I also have some questions, but we'll definitely take questions from from our participants. I hope you can see me well. Okay. So a question from, oh, we're getting lots of thank yous in the chat. We have a question. I saw a hand raised. Okay, I think was there someone that wanted to ask a question? So for me, what I got, from the very beginning when you spoke about cash is not free. I mean, it sounded like an oxymoron. I've never heard, something like that, but cash is not free. It was definitely interesting, and you really explained that well. And also just at the end now, when you pick that quote from Robert Kiyosaki, cash. You said cash flow is the cash flow that management is the problem, right? Not the cash. That's really interesting because you hear a lot of people who have a lot of money, but then bankruptcy. And it's always a shock, but I think what you've explained now, helped to clarify that. Okay. Let me go. So let me ask our participants, do we have any questions? This is the Q&A section, please. Feel free to ask all your questions now. I hope we're all taking notes. Or you can, okay, or you can raise your hand if you prefer. So in the chat from Olubenga, he says, thank you so much, Ma. This was very insightful and relevant for me. The last year has been largely focused on tracking my business numbers and improving cash flow planning. Okay, so he's just making a comment on, on what she talked on. From Aramide, what are the things to be prioritized during a recession as a business? Over to you.
I had a question as well. There's a question before
Okay.
mine. Please, sorry.
Okay. Let me take the first question and then we'll come back to Ramide's on. Okay. So from Funlola, question from me. Are there any cash flow metrics that a business should work towards? From your presentation, it sounds like days receivable should be shorter than days payable? Okay, over.
Yes, thank you so much, Funlola, for that question. Yes, you are very correct. Days receivable, how long does it take for you to receive, how many days does it take for you to receive cash, to receive from your customers? And how many days does it take you to pay your vendors as well? And the example I showed there, when you're telling your customers to pay you within 30 days, right? Meanwhile, to pay you within 60 days. Meanwhile, you have to pay, you've agreed with your vendors that you will pay them every month. And there are even some expenses that you have to pay every month, like salaries, the utilities. Your staff will want to collect their salaries at the end of the month. There are a number of things that you have to, the utilities, the water bill, electricity, you pay them every month, right? So it is very important that you are collecting faster from your customers than when you have to pay your vendors. That is just the simple KPI. Forget all the formulas and everything. In layman's language, how many days are you allowing your customers to make payments? And what are you promising your vendors? How many days are you promising to pay them back? So you need to collect faster from your customers, right? And like you rightly said, the receivable days should be shorter than the payable days. I hope that helps.
Yes.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Aramide's question on what are the things to deprioritize during a recession. So recession, this is not the period to start trying things out that you are not sure of. It's not the time to start experimenting, especially when you have limited resources, because experimenting means that you are not sure of the outcome and you may lose money in that regard. And I think I covered some of the things that businesses can start doing. Review your cost structure. How much of that cost is helping you to generate additional revenue? Right? Are there some expenses that maybe you need to stop for now, or to reduce them? So this is not the period to start having, thank God it's Friday, every day an elaborate one. You can reduce that. Then look at the number of staff that you have. Must they all come physically to the office every day? This is the time to look at, to leverage technology, to reduce some of those expenses. Because if the staff are not coming physically, it will reduce your energy costs somehow. So, you need to start looking at questioning those expenses again, more like questioning the fundamental. Do I really need, if I stop this expense, is it going to affect my sales? Will it affect my customers? So anything that will not compromise quality, right? You need to relook at them. I hope that helps.
Oh, hello. I think I was
Hello?
muted.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, thank you. So that Aramle says thank you to answer that question. We have another question from Funlola. She's asking, what are the best ways to optimize excess cash if you are not reinvesting in your business? Short-term fixed deposit, Any other smart options?
So, what you need to look at is for those funds, when will you require them? Because the time frame you have will determine what other options, that you have. If you would need the money maybe in 1 year or thereabout, maybe you can look at money market investments. Um, you can look at maybe CPs, right? But it depends on when you need those funds. If you need those funds on time, call deposit, short-term fixed deposit is still the best option. Otherwise, when the time comes to utilize the funds, you can't go and do stock, right? Because you may lose money at that point in time. The level of speculation we have to depend on when you need the funds and what you need those funds for. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Fumola says thank you as well. So that definitely answered her question. Okay, so I'll throw it open. Is there anyone who has a question that wants to raise their hand, please? We'll take questions from the audience now. We've gone through the questions in the chat. Okay. Whilst we're waiting for that, I'm just, thinking about everything you said, more not from a business perspective though, just from a personal, perspective and looking at cash flow optimization. Because if you have one stream of income, for example, it's something that you really need to also address how your expenses and your income is, you're managing the two. But I have to admit, something I don't like to really look at. I think there are quite a few people, like that. You may not want to just look at that aspect, but it's really important, even from a personal aspect, to have a budget and have a cash flow management system, so to speak.
Yeah, it is extremely important, and especially for us ladies, we do window shopping, impulse buying. In fact, what has worked for me, but sometimes I still fall short of it, is when I see something, I give myself maybe 1 week or 2 weeks. Once you are able to overcome that temptation
Yes.
immediately, the tendency to go back is minimized. And another thing that I discovered is called the hedonic principle, where if you, for instance, if you're changing your wardrobe, you want to buy 5 clothes. So instead of buying the 5 at the same time, maybe you buy 2, because the feeling, that excitement, you can have it piecemeal. So you feel good that, oh yes, I just bought new clothes. Then maybe in the next 3 or 4 months, you buy the next set. If you buy everything at once, just give yourself a few days. You are back to square one. You want to buy more.
I completely agree. I completely agree. It's something like delayed gratification as well. You can stagger
Yes.
your rewards, but somehow it feels like you just want everything now. But I'll definitely try this system that you talked about. Okay. So if we don't have any more questions, I just want to ask if you have some final words just to wrap up and sort of summarize some key points, or maybe something you didn't mention earlier, if you'd like to just leave us with some words to remember. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think I said them earlier, that your cash is the fuel of the business. The cash is just like cash flow is just like the circulatory system in the body, right? It's like it has to keep pumping. If there's no blood in the body, the body is dead already. So that's the same thing with cash. Cash is the lifeblood of the business. No business can survive without cash, right? It keeps the business running. So the encouragement, or what I would like to just say, is we need to take cash management serious, because it's either you are losing your sale or you are losing profit. Cash is not free. So once we remember that cash is not free, that there is always an opportunity cost with cash. So I think having that mindset will help us to take our cash flow management serious. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I was muted. Yes, we
Okay.
have a lot of things in the chat from Aramide, from Auntie Yang. She says, thank you so much, Toyin. Excellent presentation. From Fulala as well. She says, thank you. Hopefully we'll get slides. Yes, thank you so much. I can speak for everyone too as well, even though, okay, we have more chats coming in. This has been insightful. Yes, from Joko. But definitely it was. It definitely was. As you said earlier, you can really spend hours on this, and I feel that you really did justice in the time frame, and it's given all of us here something to think about going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Enjoy the
Bye-bye.
rest of the evening. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye. Bye.